Joe Biden's decision makes us more dependent on the Middle East, more dependent on Russia, us more dependent on the Middle East, more dependent on Russia, us more dependent on the Middle East, more dependent on Russia, more dependent on Venezuela for our supply of energy. I find his decision disgusting.
It's very frustrating that one of the first acts of the new president was
disgusting.
It's very frustrating that one of the first acts of the new president
disgusting.
It's very frustrating that one of the first acts of the new president
disgusting.
It's very frustrating that one of the first acts of the new president was, I think, to disrespect America's closest friend and ally, Canada, and to kill good-paying union jobs on both sides of the border, and ultimately to make the United States more dependent on foreign oil imports from OPEC dictatorships.
Been nearly 4 years to the day since President Trump greenlighted construction on the Keystone XL pipeline.
This clip shows Donald Trump in the White House greenlighting the order.
With regard to the construction of the Keystone pipeline, something that's been in dispute, and it's subject to a renegotiation of terms by us. We're going to renegotiate some of the terms, and if they'd like, we'll see if we can get that pipeline built. A lot of jobs, 28,000 jobs.
You might remember at this time, his conversations with foreign leaders were being leaked on a regular basis. He was accused of ruining relationships with our closest allies. So will the same now be said potentially of President Biden? Later today, he's going to speak with the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. After bringing us back to the Obama days, blocking the XL project, which would have secured the transport of 830,000 barrels of oil each day, which firms up our energy independence, of course. Trudeau called this disappointment by the new President Biden, quote, disappointing.
The premiers and I talked about the United States' decision on the Keystone XL pipeline. I am, of course, disappointed with this choice.
Other officials there are going further, talking about sanctions or retaliation against the United States. Joining me now exclusively, Alberta Premier Jason Kenney. Premier Kenney, thank you very much. Good to have you here today.
I find his decision disgusting. I find his decision disgusting.
This afternoon, what's the impact on the relationship between our two countries over this?
And it is it's very frustrating that one
over this.
It's very frustrating that one of the first acts of the new president was, I think, to disrespect America's closest friend and new president was, I think, to disrespect America's closest friend and ally, Canada, and to kill good-paying union jobs on both sides of the border, and to kill good-paying union jobs on both sides of the border, and ultimately to make the United States more dependent on foreign oil imports from OPEC dictatorships. To make the United States more dependent on foreign oil imports from OPEC dictatorships.
Joe Biden needs to reconsider his decision immediately. Think about this. To reconsider his decision immediately. Think about this. Reconsider his decision immediately. Think about this. On Joe Biden's first day in office, thousands of people received a notice that they've been laid off of their job. These are jobs, good-paying jobs. $80,000, $90,000 a year, $30, $40 an hour jobs are laid off. Sometimes it seems abstract that a pipeline in North and South Dakota moving oil and gas from Canada to the United States could impact Wisconsin workers. But as you stand here at Michael's today, as you stand and look at the men behind me, these are the type of workers that lost their job this week. Job workers that lost their job this week. Joe Biden needs to reconsider this action immediately.
We don't understand it, and at the very least, we believe that those who have invested in this project, trusting in the regulatory process in the U.S., should be compensated by the U.S. administration.
Yeah, well, you make a lot of great points there. I want to unpack some of those with you, if I may. One of them is that one of the greatest achievements we've seen in the past several years for the United States and Canada, for all of North America, is energy independence. So if you're Saudi Arabia and you're looking at the cancellation of this deal today, what's going through your mind? If you're Saudi Arabia and you're looking at the cancellation of this deal today, what's going through your mind? If you're Saudi Arabia and you're looking at the cancellation of this deal today, what's going through your mind?
Exactly. This is a good day, a good decision for the OPEC producers in reducing Canadian shipments of energy to the world's largest energy consumer. In particular, Keystone XL would, like the current Keystone pipeline, largely ship Alberta heavy crude, and many of the U.S. refineries down along the Gulf Coast are keyed up to process heavy. If they don't get it from Canada, they've got to get it from places ultimately like Venezuela, and I don't see how that's in the interests of the United States. So
Joe Biden's decision makes us more dependent on the Middle East, more dependent on Russia, more dependent on Venezuela, more dependent on Russia, more dependent on Venezuela for our supply of energy. Dependent on Venezuela for our supply of energy. I find his decision disgusting. I find his decision disgusting. Energy. I find his decision disgusting.
Our plea to the Biden administration is, please take a half step back here, get into a conversation with your closest friend and ally, Canada, about how we can ensure a future for safe energy exports, continental energy independence and security between Canada and the U.S., while also taking very seriously climate policy and environmental policy. You know, President Obama's State Department concluded after rigorous study that Keystone XL would actually reduce carbon emissions because the alternative will be shipping it by rail, which is higher emitting and less safe. The alternative will be shipping it by rail, which is higher emitting and less safe.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. I don't know how they get around that in the Biden administration because, as you point out, 5 times the United States State Department evaluated the environmental aspects of the Keystone Pipeline deal. And all 5 times the State Department said that they could not find any increase in environmental issues that would arise from this.
Call the White House. Call the White House and ask them to undo this mess that they've created. And let's get these people back to work. So it's unfortunate that we're here today, but I think it's necessary because it's kind of a last-ditch effort to save these jobs and get this thing reversed. So it's a last-ditch effort to save these jobs and get this thing reversed. So last-ditch effort to save these jobs and get this thing reversed. So thank you.
So I would call on our friends in the United States to realize Canada is your closest friend and ally. We're a much safer source of energy to fuel your economy than OPEC dictatorships. Having said that, I was really disappointed that the new president didn't give enough respect to America's closest friend and ally to at least sit down with us and hear our case about how we've reduced carbon emissions from Canada's oil sands, about how this pipeline would operate on a net zero carbon emitting basis, about First Nations, American Native communities that are taking an ownership stake in this, about the huge support of unions, the economic benefits. We have a strong case to make, and we just wish the U.S. administration would let us make that case.
For more than 65 years, Transcare
saves the day after the Democrats disregard thousands of troops to be left out in the cold. This is the Next News Network with thenextnewsnetwork.com. My name is Elijah. I'm filling in for Gary. Please go ahead and subscribe to this channel by hitting that red button and turning on the bell. Our story today comes from Ryan Saavedra from the Daily Wire, who reports that Democrats have started to face backlash online after photographs emerged Thursday of a National Guardsman being forced to sleep in parking garages, while of course also having minimal access to restrooms and other essential items. Well, according to the Gateway Pundit, there's one power outlet and one bathroom for 5,000 soldiers in this parking garage. Shocking, yes, but the military felt completely abandoned by the DC elites, and that's no surprise. Take a look at the clip.
Turning back to Washington, there was swift backlash last night over a plan to move some National Guard troops out of the Capitol. Lawmakers and others on social media expressed outrage after these images of the troops resting on the ground went viral. The Capitol Police had told many of them to move to a nearby parking garage.
This is unconscionable and unsafe, tweeted Republican Senator Tim Scott, while Democratic Senator and retired Guard member Tammy Duckworth tweeted, "They can use my office." Just before midnight, service members were permitted back inside the Capitol to a designated area for their shift breaks. In the days leading up to Wednesday's inauguration, more than 25,000 National Guard members formed a protective ring around the city.
I don't think they even have magazines in those guns. It didn't look like it. Very weird to have a gun with no bullets. Well, this morning, OAN reported that President Trump gave permission for the troops to stay at his lavish Trump Hotel in Washington, D.C. Trump loves the troops. But of course, Biden and the Democrats who insisted that they be there don't. It's no surprise we remember this kind of treatment under the Obama administration as we watch the sad decline of the United States into an anti-nationalist nation. Watch the sad decline of the United States into an anti-nationalist nation. Watch the sad decline of the United States into an anti-nationalist nation, and instead into some globalist archetype that suddenly praises mass immigration, wants to get involved in wars overseas, and of course, abandons those who put themselves on the line for our country. Anyway, have a great rest of the week, and may God bless the United States of America. I'm signing out.
About the policies that could affect your retirement savings in this new administration. Rarely is there anyone reporting on how these changes will affect us, but my friend Colin Plume over at Noble Gold, well, they've got a YouTube channel and they are covering it all. The Noble Gold Investment Channel has new interviews with people like Dr. Steve Turley, Paul Begley, about what we can expect, along with up-to-the-minute news, analysis, and discussion about precious metals and investing. So, if you want to know what's really going on out there, subscribe to my friends at the Noble Gold Investment Channel at the link below. We'll see you at the next report for the Next News Network. I'm Gary French.
I must confess that that dream that I had that day has at many points turned into a nightmare.
But in the last year of his life, you should read Tavis Smiley's book on the death of a king. And the preachers turned on Doc. Wait now. See, some of you are angry with me, thinking I'm trying to steal Dr. King's legacy. Hell no. Don't put that on me. And don't let the white man put that on you so you could put that on me. I'm raising Dr. King because it is wrong for you to think that that man died because he had a dream. That man was a revolutionary thinker in the last days of his life. Some of his inner circle turned on him. They didn't agree with him talking against the war in Vietnam. He was hurting that his own staff, some of them disagreed with him. Then churches denied him. They didn't want him in their pulpit. Now it's easy to put his picture up and talk that crap about how you love him. You're a damn liar if you loved him. I want you to listen. If you loved him, why did you let the writers of history write him down as a dreamer and pacify you with all these streets and boulevards named after him. But if you read his life, in the last 2 years of his life, he met with my teacher. I don't know what they talked about, but I know my teacher. He loved Dr. King, my teacher. He loved Dr. King, but he showed him prophecy. He showed him where we are to separate from this enemy and not be integrated into him, as Moses didn't integrate the children of Israel into Pharaoh. When he said, I want to get the language straight tonight. When he said, I want to get the language straight tonight. So on that last night, when he said, I want to get the language straight tonight, he stopped talking Negro and began talking black, talking Negro and began talking black. He even agreed that separation might be better for us for a while. He agreed that separation might be better for us for a while. He even agreed that separation might be better for us for a while. Like a people sick or diseased, you take them out of the public and you heal them. And then the dream speech on you from 63. Then throw the dream speech on you from 63. But you let them throw the dream speech on you from 63. Let them play for you the speech that he made in New York City when he condemned the hypocrisy of the Johnson government. Condemned the hypocrisy of the Johnson government. Condemn the hypocrisy of the Johnson government that's fighting a war in Vietnam against poor people there and practicing violence, then want Dr. King to preach nonviolence to us. Kill people that never did nothing to you overseas.
Just weeks before he was assassinated, in a meeting with members of his staff, told Harry Belafonte he was melancholy because he feared that he was integrating his people into a burning house. His people into a burning house. Melancholy because he feared that he was integrating his people into a burning house. King, 2 months before his assassination, sat with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Like two brothers, they got along like two brothers. They spoke frankly, honestly to each other. And Dr. King asked the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, do you really think that all white people are devils? South. He said, we know that there are snakes that are poisonous, and there are snakes that are not. The rattlesnake is poisonous, but the king snake is not. He was telling Dr. King, we both are Georgia boys. We know that you have some white people that hate you with a passion, and you have some white people that will tolerate you and even help you. But a snake is a snake. You know the final outcome of such a great meeting, but I do know this. They met in February just before our National Saviors Day convention. And just a few months later, Dr. King was dead. What would America have been like if Dr. King and Elijah Muhammad, if the civil rights movement and the nationalist movement saw the common ground and each of us worked together for the common cause, which is the total liberation of our people. Look at what Dr. King said of government. Quote, "The demands in Congress and the administration for police measures as the primary solution are a sick echo of the solutions proposed as long ago as 1919 in the Washington riots." The Herald Tribune, a New York paper, called for a larger, better drilled, more ably commanded police organization. And the New York Globe anticipated the current congressional sentiment of not rewarding the rioters in stating on July 23rd, 1919, there is nothing to be done but to quiet the rioters, by force. We make no pretense nowadays of settling the race question. We simply keep it in abeyance. They haven't, to this moment, they haven't settled the race question to this moment. They haven't settled the race question to this moment.
In 1967, Dr. King presented a talk to the leaders and members of SCLC. And that talk was titled, "The Crisis in America's Cities, an analysis of social disorder and a plan of action against poverty, discrimination, and racism in urban America." This address,
tense nowadays, of settling the race question, we simply keep it in abeyance. They haven't.
Dr. King presented a talk to the leaders and members of SCLC. And that talk was titled, "The Crisis in America's Cities, an analysis of social disorder and a plan of action against poverty, discrimination, and racism in urban America." This address was made August 15th, 1967 in Atlanta, Georgia, 4 years after the famous "I Have a Dream" speech on the Washington Mall. Let us listen to his words and reflect. Dr. King said, "A million words will be written and spoken to dissect the ghetto outbreaks. But for a perceptive and vivid expression of culpability, I would submit 2 sentences written a century ago at that time by Victor Hugo. And he quoted Mr. Hugo in these words: "If the soul is left in darkness, sins will be committed. The guilty one is not he who commits the sin, but he who causes the darkness." End quote. Dr. King goes on to say, "The policy makers of the white society have caused the darkness. They created discrimination. They created slums. They perpetuate unemployment, ignorance, and poverty. It is incontestable and deplorable that Negroes have committed crimes, but they are derivative crimes. They are born of the greater crimes of the white society. When we ask Negroes to abide by the law, let us also declare that the white man does not abide by law in the ghettos. Day in and day out, he violates welfare laws to deprive the poor of their meager allotments. He flagrantly violates building codes and regulations. His police make a mockery of the law. He violates laws on equal employment and education and the provisions for civil services. The slums are the handiwork of a vicious system of the white society. Negroes live in them, but do not make them any more than a prisoner makes a prison. Dr. King went on to say, "Let us say it boldly, that if the total slum violations of law by the white man over the years were calculated and were compared with the law-breaking of a few days of riots, the hardened criminal would be the white man." He went on to say the second major cause of the crisis in the inner cities is unemployment, because it furnishes the bulk of the shock troops. Government figures reveal that the rate of unemployment for Negroes runs as high as 15% in some cities, and for youth up to 30 and 40%. It is not accidental that the major actors in all the outbreaks were the youth, with most of their lives yet to live. The slamming of doors in their faces could be expected to induce rage and rebellion. This is especially true when a boastful nation, while neglecting them, gloats over its wealth, power, and world preeminence. Yet, almost 40% of Negro youth waste their barren lives standing on street corners. Has anything changed? My dear President Obama and black people, in 50 years, has anything really changed? Dr.